July 14, 2024. Lake Michigan. 47 meters below the surface. Two recreational divers descend into darkness. Jason Marsh and Kevin Lowe have explored these depths dozens of times. They know the underwater landscape. Sunken boats rest here like forgotten monuments. But today, they find something different. The beam of Jason's flashlight catches metal, a registration number, IL4729-MK. He photographs it. Later, back on shore, a simple database search reveals what they found. This boat disappeared 9 years ago, July 16, 2015. The owner's name, Thomas Riley. The Coast Guard arrives within hours. Specialized recovery teams prepare equipment. It takes 3 days to bring the vessel to the surface. When they do, investigators find something unexpected in the cabin: a waterproof Pelican case sealed tight. Inside, a GoPro Hero 4 camera. The SD card still functions. 87% of the data remains intact. 12 hours of footage, preserved beneath Lake Michigan for 9 years. Before we begin the story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. We're really curious where you're tuning in from. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a rating. Federal agents watch the final 3 minutes. A gray-haired man in a Greenpeace baseball cap films his son holding a 4-pound walleye. The young man laughs. Sunlight glints off his sunglasses. The father's voice: "That's a catch! Mom won't believe this!" Pure joy in those words. Then the camera jerks, spins backward. The frame fills with something else. A black industrial vessel, 200 meters away, moving fast. The footage shakes. The audio captures shouting, not words, just noise. Then a loud mechanical sound. The camera angle shifts downward, shows the deck of the fishing boat, then nothing. The video cuts to black at 11:30 a.m. That timestamp would later prove crucial. Thomas Riley was 52 years old in the summer of 2015. He'd worked as an environmental engineer for 25 years before retiring in 2012. Colleagues described him as principled. Stubborn, some said. He'd filed complaints against polluting companies throughout his career, made enemies in corporate boardrooms. His son Ethan was 19, a second-year biology student, passionate about ecology like his father. They went fishing together often, father-son bonding over shared interests in nature and conservation. Sarah Riley, Thomas's wife and Ethan's mother, was 48, a middle school teacher. On July 16, 2015, she kissed them both goodbye at 6:15 a.m. Thomas sent her a text at 7:23. "Weather perfect, love you." She never heard from him again. By 6 p.m. that evening, Sarah called the Coast Guard. Her husband always returned by 5. Always. He was meticulous about schedules. The search began 90 minutes later. Helicopters scanned the water. Boats crisscrossed the lake. They found nothing. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. The case went cold. But Sarah Riley never stopped believing they'd find answers. She kept Thomas's office exactly as he left it: his papers, his files, his research. When news of the boat's discovery reached her in July 2024, she was 57, gray streaks in her hair, tired eyes, 9 years of not knowing. Now she would finally learn the truth. Federal investigators began reviewing Thomas Riley's background. What they found changed everything. 4 days before the fishing trip, Thomas had sent a letter. The recipient, the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. The letter contained photographs. Dead fish floating in the northern section of Lake Michigan. Water samples showing elevated levels of industrial toxins. And something else. Coordinates. Latitude 42 degrees 17 minutes north. Longitude 86 degrees 43 minutes west. A note. Suspected illegal dumping site. Activity between 2 and 4 a.m. Those coordinates sat 800 meters from where the GoPro camera captured its final footage. Thomas Riley hadn't gone fishing that morning. He'd gone investigating. The EPA confirmed receiving the letter on July 13, 2015. They'd opened a preliminary inquiry. Then Thomas and Ethan disappeared. The inquiry stalled. Without the complainant available for follow-up, the case was shelved. Investigators pulled records for the area Thomas had identified. One facility dominated that stretch of shoreline, North Chem Industries, a chemical manufacturing plant employing 600 people. Annual revenue, $300 million. Products, industrial solvents, pesticides, polymer compounds. The company had been cited for environmental violations before. In 2009, Thomas Riley himself had participated in an investigation. NorthChem paid a $200,000 fine for improper waste disposal procedures. The company upgraded their systems, or claimed to. A former co-worker of Thomas Riley's provided context. Thomas never let things go. If he thought a company was cheating, he'd spend months gathering evidence. He once told me he was building a case against a big fish, said it would be the accomplishment of his career. That was maybe a week before he vanished. Sarah Riley confirmed the timeline. Thomas seemed excited that whole week. He kept saying he and Ethan were going on an important trip. He took the GoPro camera. Ethan had given it to him for his birthday. Thomas wasn't much for technology, but he learned how to use it specifically for this fishing trip. In Ethan's room, Sarah found his journal, an entry dated July 14, 2015. Dad's acting mysterious. Says we're fishing Thursday but bringing the camera and binoculars. Told me he'd show me how real scientists gather evidence. Not totally sure what he means, but sounds cool. Thomas Riley had planned this carefully. He'd known exactly where to go, what to look for, what to document. A maritime expert examined the footage. That's a T-270 class industrial transport, used for moving containerized chemical cargo. Only 2 companies in the region operate vessels matching that profile. One of those companies was NorthChem Industries. Agents requested shipping logs from NorthChem for July 16, 2015. The company complied immediately. According to their records, all vessels remained docked that entire day. Security footage from the facility's marina appeared to confirm this. Timestamps showed boats tied at their moorings from midnight through 24 hours later. The company's press secretary, James Whitney, issued a statement. NorthChem Industries operates in full compliance with all environmental regulations. Our vessels do not conduct nighttime operations in restricted areas. Any suggestion of corporate wrongdoing is baseless and irresponsible. We sympathize with the Riley family's loss, but we had no involvement in this tragic accident. The investigation seemed to hit a wall. The video clearly showed an industrial vessel pursuing the Riley's boat, but according to official records, no such vessel was operating in that area at that time. Agents shifted their focus. Who else had contact with Thomas and Ethan that day? David Collins, age 31 in 2015, 40 in 2024. Owner of Bayside Marina where the Rileys kept their boat. David had checked them out that morning at 6:30. He was the last person to see them alive. His statement from 2015 seemed straightforward. Thomas rented the boat at 6:30 a.m., said he was heading to the northern fishing grounds. I warned him about tanker traffic in that area, but he said he'd be careful. When they didn't return by evening, I waited for Sarah to call me. I didn't want to raise an alarm prematurely. That last detail struck investigators as odd. Most marina operators would have called the Coast Guard themselves after a boat was several hours overdue. David Collins had waited for Sarah Riley to contact him first. Financial records revealed something interesting. In 2014, Bayside Marina faced bankruptcy. David Collins owed $200,000 to various creditors. The bank had scheduled foreclosure proceedings. Then, in October 2015, 3 months after the Rileys vanished, David Collins paid off all his debts, every single one. The source of this money wasn't immediately clear. No bank loans, no obvious business windfall, just a sudden influx of cash that saved his marina. When questioned in 2024, David Collins became defensive. I secured private financing, a personal investor. It's not relevant to what happened to the Rileys. But federal investigators thought it might be very relevant indeed. They subpoenaed David Collins's banking records. What they found was a single wire transfer, $75,000, received August 7, 2015. The sender, a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. The company's actual ownership was hidden behind layers of legal entities. David Collins hired a lawyer. Meanwhile, forensic analysts continued examining the recovered boat. The vessel showed significant damage, but the pattern didn't match a typical collision. The hull breaches appeared deliberately inflicted. Concentrated impact points suggesting intentional ramming rather than accidental contact. More telling, the GPS navigation system had been torn from its mounting, not broken by impact, removed, pulled free with enough force to leave marks in the fiberglass. Near that empty mounting bracket, investigators found something else, a brass compass, antique design. Engraved on the back, "To Thomas, from Dad. Always find your way home, 1998. The compass was perfectly preserved. Brass doesn't corrode easily underwater. The glass face remained intact. The needle still moved freely. Why would Thomas Riley use an old compass when he had GPS? A marine electronics expert provided insight. GPS systems can be tracked. If Riley knew someone was monitoring his location, removing the GPS would make him invisible to tracking systems. Using the compass was a backup navigation method. This changed the entire picture. Thomas Riley hadn't just witnessed something illegal. He'd known someone was watching him, known enough to try hiding his position. The FBI timeline expanded. They established a sequence. Thomas sent his EPA letter on July 12th. He planned his fishing trip for July 16th. 4 days for someone to learn about his complaint. 4 days to organize a response. His journal, found in a waterproof bag in the boat, suggested he had. The final entry, dated July 15th. Tomorrow we document everything. If something happens, Sarah knows where to find my research. All backup files in the house safe. Combination is Ethan's birthday. Sarah Riley hadn't known about any safe. After reading that journal entry, she searched. Behind a painting in Thomas's office, she found a wall safe she'd never noticed before. The combination worked. Inside, USB drives, dozens of photographs, water analysis reports, and a map. The map showed Lake Michigan's northern section. Multiple X marks indicated locations, dates and times written next to each. A pattern emerged. Every marked date fell between 2 and 4 a.m. Every marked location sat within 3 miles of North Chem Industries facility. Thomas Riley had been monitoring illegal dumping operations for months. The USB drives contained 2 years of documentation. Thomas Riley had begun his private investigation in March 2013. Hundreds of photographs, some taken from the shore at night, others from his boat at dawn, capturing chemical residue floating on the water's surface. Time-stamped images showing patterns of discoloration spreading from the industrial zone. Water samples told a more detailed story. Thomas had collected specimens from 40 different locations. He'd paid for independent laboratory analysis out of his own pocket. The results showed consistent contamination, benzene derivatives, heavy metals, chlorinated compounds, all traceable to chemical manufacturing processes. The toxin levels weren't immediately lethal, but chronic exposure over years would devastate aquatic ecosystems. Fish populations would decline, birds feeding on those fish would sicken. The damage would cascade through the entire food chain. Thomas Riley had estimated the cost of proper waste disposal for a facility like NorthChem, approximately $4 million annually. If the company had been dumping illegally for a decade or more, they'd saved $40 million or more. That kind of money created powerful incentives to keep secrets hidden. The FBI brought in environmental crime specialists. They reviewed Thomas's evidence. One agent summarized the findings. This documentation would have been sufficient for a federal investigation. Criminal charges, massive fines, potentially executives facing prison time. Riley was building a case that could have destroyed the company. Sarah Riley sat through the briefing, listened to agents describe her husband's meticulous work. When they finished, she spoke quietly. "He never told me, never said a word about any of this. He must have known it was dangerous." Federal investigators turned their attention to North Chem Industries, the company's security procedures. Who would have known about Thomas Riley's EPA complaint? Who had authority to access that information? Corporate structure indicated a small circle of executives: the CEO, the Chief Operations Officer, the Director of Security, the Legal Department. Perhaps a dozen people total with clearance to view EPA correspondence. One name appeared repeatedly in security-related documentation: Marcus Holden, Chief of Security in 2015, age 28 at the time, military background, 6 years Marine Corps, honorable discharge, hired by NorthChem in 2013. Personnel files described Holden as efficient and discreet. His performance reviews consistently rated him as exceptional. In 2016, 1 year after the Riley disappearance, Marcus Holden received a promotion. New title: Director of Corporate Risk Management. His salary jumped from $70,000 to $130,000 annually, plus a $50,000 bonus for effective crisis management during a challenging operational period. That bonus caught investigators' attention. FBI agents interviewed current and former NorthChem employees. Most described the company as environmentally responsible, but a few told different stories, always off the record, always requesting anonymity. A former night shift supervisor remembered seeing maintenance crews loading unmarked containers onto boats after midnight. I asked once what they were doing. My manager said it was routine equipment transfer to offshore storage, told me not to worry about it. But it happened 2-3 times a month, always late night, always the same pattern. Another former employee recalled Marcus Holden's management style. He was very focused on operational security, had cameras everywhere, monitored all communications. He'd fire people for minor policy violations, created an atmosphere where nobody asked questions. The FBI requested all security footage from NorthChem facilities for July 15 and 16, 2015. The company provided digital files spanning 72 hours. Agents reviewed every frame. The marina footage showed exactly what NorthChem had claimed. Boats remained docked. No vessels departed. Timestamps appeared consistent throughout. But a digital forensics specialist noticed something. Frame rates fluctuated slightly. Shadows moved in ways that didn't match solar progression. The expert's conclusion: this footage has been edited professionally. Someone removed approximately 40 minutes of recording between 11:30 p.m. on July 15th and 12:10 a.m. on July 16th. They replaced it with looped footage from another time period. Very sophisticated work. The FBI brought in the specialist who'd performed that editing. Security technician named Robert Chen. No relation to any law enforcement personnel. He'd worked at NorthChem from 2014 to 2017. Chen initially denied everything. Then investigators showed him evidence of the manipulation, timestamp inconsistencies, pixel-level analysis, Chen's digital signature embedded in the file metadata. Finally, Chen admitted the truth. Marcus Holden came to me on July 17, 2015. Told me there'd been a security incident the previous night. Said I needed to edit the marina footage to remove sensitive operational information. He offered me $10,000 cash. I was 26. I needed money. I did what he asked. Chen described the process. The original footage showed one of the company's chemical transport vessels leaving the dock at 11:45 p.m. on July 15th. It returned at 2:15 a.m. on July 16th. Then it left again at 11:10 a.m. and came back at 2:20 p.m. I erased both trips, made it look like the boat never moved. That timeline aligned perfectly with Thomas Riley's planned surveillance. The boat leaving at 11:45 p.m. would have been conducting the illegal dumping run Thomas intended to photograph. The second departure at 11:10 a.m. would have been approximately 30 minutes before Thomas and Ethan's final video recording. Someone had gone after them. Investigators needed more than edited footage and testimony from a paid technician. They needed physical evidence connecting NorthChem to the Riley deaths. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: cellular phone records. In 2015, the FBI hadn't requested these records. The case had been treated as a boating accident. Now, 9 years later, AT&T still maintained archived data. Federal agents subpoenaed records for both Thomas Riley's and Ethan Riley's mobile phones. The standard timeline placed their disappearance at approximately 11:30 a.m. That's when the GoPro footage ended. The assumption had been that both men died around that time. But the phone records told a different story. Thomas Riley's iPhone last connected to cellular towers at 1:47 p.m., nearly 2.5 hours after the video cut out. The phone attempted to dial 911. The call didn't complete. Insufficient signal strength. But the attempt was logged. More importantly, the cell tower triangulation provided location data. Thomas Riley's phone wasn't in the middle of the lake when he tried calling for help. The signal pinged from a tower serving the industrial zone, specifically an area within half a mile of Northchem Industries facility. Thomas Riley had been alive on land more than 2 hours after the confrontation on the water. So had Ethan. Their phones remained active until 1:47 p.m., then went permanently offline. What happened during those missing hours? The FBI developed a theory. The industrial vessel hadn't tried to sink the Riley's boat immediately. Instead, it had pursued them, forced them toward shore, toward the Northchem facility. The Rileys had been captured alive. Why? To retrieve the evidence they'd gathered, to find out who else knew about their investigation, to determine how much damage control was necessary. Sarah Riley listened to this reconstruction. Her hands shook. You're saying they were taken to that factory? That they were held there? The lead investigator, Special Agent Robert Chen, different Robert Chen, same surname by coincidence, chose his words carefully. We believe your husband and son were detained at the facility. We believe efforts were made to recover their surveillance equipment and any documentation they possessed. And then? Sarah's voice barely whispered. And then the situation escalated beyond whoever was controlling it. The FBI couldn't prove what happened inside that facility. No witnesses had come forward. No physical evidence remained after 9 years. But the timeline suggested Thomas and Ethan Riley had been alive until at least 1:47 p.m. After Thomas's failed 911 call, both phones went dark simultaneously. Investigators theorized the phones had been destroyed, crushed, or submerged, rendered permanently inoperable. This matched the pattern of someone trying to eliminate all traces of the encounter. But Thomas Riley had hidden the GoPro camera. Before being captured, he'd sealed it in the waterproof Pelican case and thrown it overboard. The camera had sunk with the boat when the vessel was later scuttled, a final act of defiance, ensuring evidence survived even if he didn't. The FBI needed to connect Marcus Holden directly to the events of July 16th. The edited security footage proved a cover-up had occurred. But proving Holden had personally participated in the Rileys' deaths required more. Agents revisited David Collins, the marina owner who'd received $75,000 from a shell company 3 weeks after the disappearance. Collins now faced potential charges as an accessory after the fact. His lawyer negotiated a cooperation agreement, full immunity in exchange for complete testimony. Collins's story poured out. A man came to see me on July 23, 2015, week after the Rileys went missing. He said his company needed confidentiality regarding certain operations, said if I deleted my marina security footage from July 16th and kept quiet, I'd receive $75,000. I was desperate. The bank was foreclosing. I agreed. Collins described the man. Early 30s, military bearing, short hair, spoke in very precise language, like he'd been trained to give orders. He drove a black SUV with no license plates. Paid in cash initially, $5,000 up front. The rest came via wire transfer 2 weeks later. Agents showed Collins a photo array, 8 pictures. Marcus Holden's face appeared third in the sequence. Collins identified him immediately. That's him. That's the man who paid me. He called himself Mark. The circumstantial evidence mounted, but federal prosecutors wanted something definitive, something that would convince a jury beyond reasonable doubt. They found it in an unexpected place, Marcus Holden's home. The search warrant came through on August 1, 2024. Agents arrived at Holden's residence at 6 a.m. He lived in a modest suburban house, 3 bedrooms, well-maintained. Nothing suggested unusual wealth despite his elevated corporate position. Holden was now 37, still military fit. He answered the door calmly, reviewed the warrant without emotion, stepped aside and let agents enter. They searched for 6 hours. Computer equipment, financial records, personal belongings. Most revealed nothing incriminating. Marcus Holden appeared to live an ordinary life. Then an agent checked the garage. Behind a tool cabinet, inside a locked metal box, they found a USB flash drive. Modern device, 32 gigabytes, password protected. FBI cyber specialists broke the encryption. The drive contained video files, security camera footage from Northchem Industries, dated July 15 and 16, 2015. Original, unedited recordings. The footage showed exactly what technician Robert Chen had described: a chemical transport vessel departing the marina at 11:45 p.m., returning at 2:15 a.m., departing again at 11:10 a.m. But this footage included something else: timestamps from interior facility cameras. At 1:35 p.m. on July 16th, the transport vessel returned to dock. 3 men disembarked. One of them was Marcus Holden. The other 2 were identified as security personnel employed by Northchem in 2015. Additional footage from a warehouse loading area showed Holden and his team moving equipment, large plastic containers, the kind used for hazardous materials. The timestamp read 2:05 p.m. Why had Marcus Holden kept this evidence? Why preserve the very recordings that could incriminate him? A behavioral analyst offered insight. It's not uncommon for individuals involved in corporate crimes to maintain insurance against their employers. Holden likely feared the company might sacrifice him if the operation was exposed. This footage proved corporate knowledge and involvement. It was his leverage, his guarantee that Northchem couldn't make him the sole scapegoat. But keeping that insurance had ultimately ensured his own conviction. The USB drive changed everything. Federal prosecutors now had direct visual evidence placing Marcus Holden at the scene. The investigation expanded rapidly. Those 2 other security personnel from the footage needed to be identified and questioned. Former employee records provided names: Jason Brenner and Kyle Wade. Both had worked Northchem Security in 2015. Brenner had left the company in 2017. Wade departed in 2016. Neither man currently resided in Michigan. Jason Brenner was found in Arizona, age 35, working construction, living quietly under his legal name. When FBI agents knocked on his door, he didn't seem surprised. "I wondered when you'd come," Brenner said. "I've been waiting 9 years." Brenner waived his right to an attorney, said he wanted to talk, needed to talk. The weight of what happened had followed him across state lines and through every day since. His account began on July 15, 2015. Night shift at Northchem. Brenner was working security patrol when Marcus Holden called him and Kyle Wade into the operations office at 10 p.m. Holden told us there was a security situation, said someone had been conducting surveillance on company operations. Corporate had authorized a response. He said we'd be going out on the transport vessel to intercept and detain unauthorized personnel for trespassing on company waterways. Brenner emphasized that last point. He made it sound legal, like we were protecting corporate property. I was 26. I believed him. The vessel departed at 11:45 p.m., just as the security footage showed. But they weren't dumping chemicals that night. They were positioning for the following morning. Holden had intelligence suggesting Thomas Riley would be in the area around 11 a.m. The boat crew waited. Brenner described the confrontation. "We spotted Riley's fishing boat at 11:20 a.m. Small vessel, 2 people aboard. Holden ordered our pilot to intercept. We came up fast. Riley saw us and tried to run. Our boat was bigger and faster. We cut him off, forced him toward shore." The chase lasted approximately 10 minutes. Thomas Riley attempted evasive maneuvers, but the industrial vessel could generate larger wakes, create dangerous waves. The fishing boat couldn't outrun or outmaneuver it. Riley's boat didn't sink during the chase, Brenner clarified. Holden wanted them alive, wanted to find out what evidence they had, who else knew. We forced them to the private dock at the North Chem facility. This matched the timeline. The GoPro footage ended at 11:30, when Thomas Riley, knowing capture was inevitable, sealed the camera in its case and threw it overboard. The boat continued to the dock. Both men were brought ashore. Brenner's voice grew quieter. They were scared, but not injured. The older man, Thomas, he kept demanding to call his lawyer, said he knew his rights. The kid, his son, was crying. Holden took their phones, took everything they had on the boat, GPS, camera equipment, documents. Marcus Holden made calls. Brenner didn't know who Holden spoke with, but after 30 minutes, Holden returned. His demeanor had changed, more tense, more aggressive. Holden said the situation was critical. Riley had already contacted the EPA. He had months of evidence. Corporate was exposed. Holden kept saying we had to contain the damage. I didn't understand what he meant at first. The interrogation grew harsher. Thomas Riley refused to cooperate, refused to provide passwords to his encrypted files, refused to identify other people who might have copies of his research. At 1:47 p.m., Thomas Riley managed to grab his phone from a table where Holden had set it. He dialed 911. The call didn't connect due to poor signal inside the warehouse, but the attempt infuriated Holden. "That's when everything fell apart," Brenner said. Holden lost control, started screaming about how Riley was going to destroy everything, how this couldn't get out. I realized then we weren't just detaining someone for trespassing. This was something much worse. Brenner refused to provide details about what happened next. "I can't," he said. "I can't talk about that part. But it wasn't supposed to happen. None of it was supposed to happen." Brenner could confirm, both Thomas and Ethan Riley died at the North Chem facility that afternoon. Their bodies were placed back in their fishing boat. The vessel was taken back out onto the lake, scuttled in deep water far from the location where they'd been captured. The official story would be a boating accident, a collision with an unknown vessel. No witnesses, no evidence, just another tragedy on Lake Michigan. Except Thomas Riley had hidden the GoPro camera. That single act of foresight had preserved the truth for 9 years. Kyle Wade, the third security guard, corroborated Brenner's account. Wade had left Michigan shortly after the incident, moved to Oregon, changed careers, tried to forget, but the memories persisted. "I quit North Chem 10 months later," Wade told investigators. "Couldn't sleep, couldn't look at myself. I knew what we'd done was murder. But Holden said if anyone talked, we'd all go to prison. Said the company would protect us as long as we stayed quiet." Wade provided additional details. After the incident, Marcus Holden had gathered both men, told them what would happen next. Holden said corporate was handling it. They'd pay us bonuses for our discretion. They'd erase the security footage. They'd create alibis. But if we ever spoke about what happened, the company would deny everything. They'd make us look like rogue employees acting without authorization. They'd destroy us. Both Brenner and Wade received payments, $25,000 each, deposited gradually over 6 months to avoid suspicion. Both signed non-disclosure agreements framed as standard security protocols. The marina owner, David Collins, received his payment to destroy his security footage. The video technician, Robert Chen, edited Northchem's internal recordings. The cover-up spread across multiple people, each knowing only their small piece of the larger crime. Marcus Holden had orchestrated all of it. But who had given Holden his orders? Who at Northchem's executive level knew about the operation? Federal investigators obtained warrants for corporate communications, email servers, phone records, internal memos. The digital archaeology took weeks. They found carefully worded messages. Nothing explicitly criminal, but the pattern was clear. The CEO and COO had known about Thomas Riley's EPA complaint. They'd discussed security measures and risk mitigation. They'd authorized Holden to resolve the situation with extreme prejudice. Corporate lawyers would later argue those phrases meant legal action, cease and desist letters, nothing more. But in context, with Holden's background and the timeline, prosecutors believed otherwise. On August 3, 2024, federal agents arrested Marcus Holden. Charges included 2 counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy, tampering with evidence, obstruction of justice. Holden said nothing during his arrest, exercised his right to remain silent. His attorney issued a brief statement. Mr. Holden maintains his innocence. He looks forward to his day in court. That day in court would reveal something unexpected. The trial began in February 2025. Prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence. The GoPro footage, the cellular records, the edited security videos, testimony from Brenner and Wade, financial records showing payments. Marcus Holden's defense attempted to shift blame upward. His attorney argued that Holden had been following corporate directives, that executives had ordered him to protect company interests by any means necessary, that he was a soldier following orders from his commanders. The prosecution countered that Holden had acted with deliberate intent, that he'd planned and executed a kidnapping and double homicide, that he'd then orchestrated a complex cover-up. These weren't the actions of someone blindly following orders. These were calculated decisions. On March 15, 2025, the jury deliberated for 3 days. They found Marcus Holden guilty on all counts. During sentencing, the judge addressed Holden directly. You murdered a father and son who were trying to protect the environment. You did so to preserve corporate profits. You then spent 9 years living freely while their family suffered without answers. This court finds no grounds for leniency. Marcus Holden received life imprisonment without possibility of parole, 2 consecutive life sentences, 1 for each victim. Jason Brenner and Kyle Wade in exchange for their testimony, received reduced sentences. Each pleaded guilty to manslaughter and conspiracy. Both received 25 years with possibility of parole after 15. David Collins, the marina owner, pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice, received 5 years probation and community service. His cooperation had been valuable, but his crime had been limited to destroying evidence after the fact. Robert Chen, the video technician, received a similar deal: 3 years probation. His testimony about the edited footage had been crucial. The corporate executives faced separate trials. The CEO and COO of NorthChem Industries were charged with conspiracy to commit murder and environmental crimes. Their trials were scheduled for late 2025. At NorthChem Industries itself faced federal and state charges. The EPA investigation that Thomas Riley had initiated finally moved forward. Investigators found evidence of systematic illegal dumping spanning 12 years. The environmental damage was catastrophic. Cleanup costs were estimated at $340 million. The company filed for bankruptcy in April 2025. Assets were liquidated to pay fines and restitution. The facility was shut down permanently. 600 employees lost their jobs. Sarah Riley attended every day of Marcus Holden's trial. She sat in the front row, listened to testimony about her husband's final hours, about her son's fear, about the decisions that had stolen them from her. When the guilty verdict was read, she closed her eyes, didn't cry, didn't celebrate, just breathed. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked for her statement. Sarah Riley spoke briefly. Thomas and Ethan died doing what they believed was right. They were trying to protect the lake, protect the wildlife, protect the future. A corporation decided that profit was worth more than their lives, worth more than the truth. I'm grateful that truth finally came out, but it took 9 years. It took finding their boat at the bottom of the lake. It took technology preserving evidence that someone tried to destroy. She paused, looked directly at the cameras. My husband hid that camera knowing he might die. He made sure the truth would survive even if he didn't. That's who Thomas Riley was. That's the man I loved. That's the father my son admired. The civil lawsuit against NorthChem Industries resulted in a $12 million settlement for Sarah Riley. She used part of that money to establish the Thomas and Ethan Riley Environmental Protection Fund. The fund supports citizen scientists and environmental advocates working to expose corporate pollution. The GoPro camera that had rested at the bottom of Lake Michigan for 9 years was entered into evidence. After the trial concluded, it was offered to Sarah Riley. She declined. "Let it stay in evidence archives," she said. "Let it remain as proof, as testimony. Other people might need to know that the truth can survive, that evidence can wait years to tell its story, that justice, even delayed, is still possible." The Pelican case that had protected the camera is now displayed at the FBI field office in Detroit. A small plaque explains its significance. Agents in training view it as a reminder that seemingly small pieces of evidence can solve cases years or decades after crimes occur. Marcus Holden never spoke publicly about his crimes. He filed no appeals. He sits in federal prison serving his consecutive life sentences. He will die there. Thomas Riley was 52. Ethan Riley was 19. They went fishing on July 16, 2015. They never came home. For 9 years, their boat rested in darkness 47 meters below Lake Michigan's surface. Inside that darkness, in a sealed container, a camera waited, preserved their final moments, preserved the truth. Sometimes justice takes 9 years. Sometimes it requires technology that can survive underwater. Sometimes it requires corporate insiders who can't live with their guilt. Sometimes it requires one man's foresight to hide evidence before being captured. Thomas Riley couldn't have known his hidden camera would eventually convict his killers. But he knew evidence mattered. Truth mattered. He made sure both survived. The lake kept their secret for 9 years. Then it gave it back.